Okay, thank you, and welcome to Voices Office Hours. My name's David Ciccarelli, the CEO and co-founder of Voices, and this is another one of our last Friday of every month, what we call Office Hours, a time for you to ask your questions either live here on YouTube Live or on social media in the days leading up to today. And we already have a bunch of questions that from the audience in the last couple of days that are on the top of your minds. And today's theme is all around home recording studio and audio recording equipment. So we're going to get into that. And maybe just to provide a bit of context for all of you as well, that I'm actually a trained audio engineer. Now, again, we're going back about a decade, of course, and the technology has changed quite a bit. But during that time, a lot of stuff has stayed the same. You need to have a great quiet space. You need to have an excellent microphone, some audio recording software, hopefully a computer that's powerful enough to make it all happen. So those are the kind of things that we're going to be talking about today. And we actually have our first question here. And if you see me glancing down, it's just because I'm taking a look at some of the notes here as well, too. So we have, I think, Catber from Instagram, who's asking about really just the essentials as a newbie. Don't want to spend a whole bunch of money yet, but also want some good quality. So I would say as a newbie, a new voice actor who's getting started in the space, the type of things you want to be looking for are, of course, the key here, you said that you didn't want to be spending money. What can you acquire and obtain for that elusive home studio, on a very limited budget? So most likely you actually already have free recording software that has come with your computer. And if you use a Mac, that's going to be GarageBand. If you use a PC, then you can probably download a software package called Audacity. And that is completely free. You can Google it. There's lots of great reviews. It's open source. So if you use another operating system, you can download Audacity. That's actually where most people learn how to edit audio. And of course, here on YouTube, there's a ton of tutorials as well, too, that teach you how to use Audacity. GarageBand is also free. Those are probably the places I would start as an essential for a newbie. And then you're looking for a microphone. And there's a lot of debate over, where you want to start with a microphone. Probably the easiest way to do it is to find a microphone that can actually plug directly into your computer or laptop, which is known as a USB connection. I'm actually using a USB microphone right now. It's really very simple. That has one end goes into the microphone, the other end plugs right into your computer, and then you can pick that as an input in the recording software. So the recording software is actually picking up that particular microphone. The reason I talk about USB microphones is that you can actually get a pretty decent one for somewhere around $100. Most big box electronic stores even sell like something called a Blue Snowball or Blue microphones. There's a number of them out there in that kind of $50 to $100 range. I think this one is by Samsung. I think we paid maybe $79 for it. So that's probably the fastest, easiest way to get some great equipment. And this one actually is interesting. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just kind of hold it up. Not that, there's a number of them kind of come with this as almost like a kit. So you might even want to look for like a microphone kit. But there's some pretty cool stuff. One, it has a little stand that you can adjust the height to, which is pretty neat. And it also comes with a windscreen or a filter, a pop filter. And you'll know that you're creating pops if you say the word pop, 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 and you hold your hand close to your mouth. You can feel that air coming out. And if that air hits the diaphragm of the microphone, basically the sensitive part, that's what creates these pops in the recording. So you definitely want to avoid that. And then it also has a shock mount. And the purpose of the shock mount, which is this almost this like spider web looking thing around, and the microphone kind of sits right into it. The shock mount absorbs the shocks from maybe somebody stepping on the floor, or maybe there's a light rumble in maybe on the street level or up in your apartment building. So that's kind of the other reason why you'd want to kind of look for like a microphone kit like that you can probably get by with for, as I say, $100 or so. And then lastly, I would consider the actual treatment of your room. So a lot of times people look over this. Do I really need to have a soundproof room? If so, what does that look like? You can probably get some foam or some blankets. However you treat the room, if you ever hear someone saying that, oh, you need to treat the room, it's because they're hearing reflections of sound, kind of either glass, often from a window, or maybe it's a glass door that you have, or a big mirror in the room that you're recording, where the sound really reflects off. And you can almost hear this like slapbacky, this very slight little, very quick echo that comes because of a lot of glass. So to treat the room, you typically just want to cover those glass areas up. Maybe it's drawing the curtains, maybe it's covering, covering the mirror, what have you. And it's actually the reason why a lot of aspiring and new talent start recording in their closets. And so now you understand the backstories, because there's so much insulation and sound absorption material, namely clothes, in the closet that prevents any of that kind of sound slapbacks or unwanted noise. So those are the really kind of the basics that you'd want to look out for. Thank you. So JBot from Instagram is talking about some industry standard gear. So we went from newbie gear to industry standard gear. Microphone mentioned here is the TLM 103. That's a Neumann microphone. They're made in Germany. The TLM 103. We had one here at Voices, and when I used to run a small recording studio beforehand for a while, they are great sounding microphones. So the industry standard gear equals a more desirable talent. So I'm going to take a guess that you're really asking, like, hey, how much of a difference does it make having recording equipment that people would know and recognize? And does that really make for a better audition? Well, I mean, I think a variety of spectrum here how to answer that. I would say first, of course you want to be honing your craft, your performance, but having equipment, you can have great equipment, but if your performance is lacking, then really that's the issue. Think of like a star athlete. You can give a great, in Canada, a great hockey player, a terrible hockey stick, some old skates, and they're still going to be a phenomenal hockey player. They'll skate circles around anyone, or I'm sure give a set of golf clubs to name your favorite golfer, and they're going to outplay you all day long because they're just a great athlete. So I would work on your craft more than relying overly too much on the equipment to kind of make up for that performance. Same thing with musicians. If you're a great musician, we've all seen the musician who can just sit down at a piano in a mall or in a subway and they just amaze everyone. They're the one with the skill, and they're able to, create music and bring joy out of the instruments that they're playing. So I would put the priority there. That said, I think some clients do have a preference, or it certainly signals. Sometimes we refer to these as social signals, like, oh, this person really they've clearly been successful. They've invested in not only their craft and what they do, but also in their home studio equipment. So some of those might come in the form of a microphone, sometimes even the recording software. We mentioned, GarageBand and Audacity of being two free tools. Then often that upgrade path looks like Adobe Audition. It's like $12-15 a month as part of Adobe Creative Cloud, where you can download the software, install it on your computer. And it's, definitely considered like semi-pro or pro editing, audio editing software. And then, to reuse the term here, industry standard or gold standard for audio recording software would be Pro Tools. Now, Pro Tools, a lot of, pro voice talent say it's completely overkill. It's like really designed for, large recording studios, mixing bands together, electronic music, hip hop music, rock bands. For voiceover, you really are recording one track. Maybe you're mixing in a stereo, pre-recorded soundtrack in there, but you're not mixing the whole, every instrument individually. It's usually, as stock music or stock kind of library that you're pulling from. So for that, perhaps Pro Tools may be industries. It certainly is industry standard. maybe overkill. Don't feel like you need to invest in that. Again, it's a couple $100 in and of itself. But certainly, I agree, J-Bot. Those indicate that you're taking the whole profession very seriously, and they can signal to clients that you have a great setup. And then I would argue, just before moving on here, I'd argue you can have all the great equipment, but you also need to know how to use it. So, whatever tool you're going to invest in, take the time to actually watch the YouTube videos, to read the manual, really throw yourself into it. There's lots of shortcuts and tips and tricks for getting the most out of each of these pieces of software. And just like we're all learning here together on Voices Office Hours, another learning experience, it's arguable to say that YouTube is the world's best learning platform. I know I personally learn a ton on YouTube as well. Whenever there's a new topic I just need to understand, I usually watch a few YouTube videos as well too, as a shortcut to accelerate the learning. So Daily Bailey B from Instagram says, what do I need to do to live playback for clients in sessions? So a live playback is, the client might be listening on one end, and you're recording, and maybe they can hear you right when you're doing it live, but then they want to hear it back, because sometimes it's like, oh, did I hear something in there, or do I need to ask you to do a second take? So they're asking for really kind of a playback. So what you need to do is, one of the again, cost-effective ways to do this is what's referred to as a phone patch, which basically allows them to listen to the recording as it's being recorded in your software, as well as when you click play back, they're hearing it live, but then they're also hearing the recording play back, so the sound gets sent back to their phone where they're listening in from. And I know it's sometimes called a phone patch, but I mean, it can be a mobile phone. It doesn't have to be some landline or anything along those lines. That's one way to do it. A real hack version would be, it wouldn't be kind of nearly as clear, is just kind of holding, if they're using a phone, or they might be, there's different ways you might be able to kind of hold the speakers up, like hold the phone up to the speakers. But I would look at an actual solution on doing these live playbacks. If the client, again, if it's something new that, and they're just like, we don't know if we're going to want these, if you're concerned about that for the session, I would sort that out ahead of time, is probably the best way to do it. But usually most software, there would be an output where you kind of can play out, and the person on the other end of the call should be able to hear you. So Miss Courtney Hogg also on Instagram says, do you recommend, or can you recommend, an apartment-friendly soundproofing for noisy neighbors? So maybe you're quiet and you're trying to do your work and audition, but you've got some noisy neighbors. Well, probably the best thing to do is, how do you work around it? I think any amount of soundproofing, is going to be probably problematic if they're having a party or having a loud dinner, or they're just loud on the other side of the wall. Couple options that I can think of. Maybe is there another place in your apartment that's quieter? So can you move to another end of the apartment? That might be one idea. Perhaps even having a friendly recording sign hang on your door, on the outside. If you know your neighbors and you've met them before, and you're like, hey, I record voiceovers every now and then. We actually used to do that at our place. We just had a little sign that we'd hang on the doorknob. And here at Voices, in our podcasting recording studio, there's actually one of those light switches that says the recording sign kind of illuminates on the hall. So people are just a little bit quieter. They're not carrying on a long conversation out there. But if it's neighbors that you really just don't know, I think try to work around it. Are there any kind of patterns or hours a day that they're louder, and then I wouldn't record then, because you're inevitably going to bump into it. Are there times where they're quieter? Maybe you can work, do your auditions early in the morning or late at night. So that would be another piece of advice for you there. Okay, so Mark Gordon, another question here is, what is a good noise floor in terms of the decibel level? So let me just break this question down because it's office hours, and I always try to demystify new concepts or really define them. So we got a couple things here. We said, what's a good noise floor? So a noise floor is the inherent noise that that would be heard or kind of picked up on that microphone if no one's saying anything. So I'm going to be quiet right now. You might hear a noise floor, especially if you are wearing headphones. So I'm going to be quiet. There is actually an air conditioning system running on in the office right now. So it's this shh. That's kind of like, and it's probably several octaves lower or deeper than that, but it's almost this hum or this shush that is low down, kind of low in terms of I guess the the frequency spectrum. So what is a good noise floor decibel level? Meaning, okay, how loud can that noise floor be? Everything's going to have an inherent noise floor. Even microphones, like, because it's electronics, just have a noise floor. You've probably, sometimes you hear, like, if you've been at a live event and you hear like a grounding, almost like it's like a buzz. Well, that's almost like it's a really poor kind of noise floor. It's some equipment in that string isn't grounded properly. So, less is better. Basically, quieter is better. We got to recognize that everything's going to have one. I would say the key is if it's indistinguishable to your ear, then that's probably the best. Now, there's actually technological ways. So, maybe it goes without saying, but the quieter, the better, the lower the decibel level. I don't think that there's like some, universal threshold, at least not that I'm aware of, where that's acceptable. So the quieter, the better. There's some ways that you can handle this. On our YouTube channel, Randy put together a great video about equalizers. And one of the aspects of an equalizer that basically either boosts and kind of amplifies or reduces certain frequencies of the spectrum. So if you think of, maybe you've seen a color spectrum that has all the colors, in the rainbow and all the variations and shades, right? That's the color spectrum. Well, there's also a sound spectrum from the really low, so call it 20 hertz, which is the lowest, discernible to the human ear, which frankly you feel more than you hear, all the way up to 20,000 hertz is that high pitching, like it almost sounds like air, if you could imagine that. So that's when we say the frequency spectrum. That's what we're referring to, 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Now, the noise floor is probably, there's some rumbling on down there at like maybe 100 hertz. So one of the techniques, your voice doesn't go that low. The range of the human voice is probably like a couple hundred hertz to like a couple thousand hertz. So something at 100 hertz would be like a truck rolling down the street. So what a lot of talent do is they end up rolling off. It's called a roll-off filter or a roll-off like equalizer. They end up carving out or rolling off the really, really low end of the frequency spectrum, because people can't hear it anyway, mostly. And it's not going to degrade any part of your voice itself. So I would go and check out, as a follow-up to this video, a quick assignment for you, Mark Gordon, who asked that question. Go check out that video on equalizers, because it'll teach you and give you a bit of a visual on how to get that done. Okay, Luciano had a question around the room noise. How low does the room noise in my house need to be? So really similar type of thing. I'd actually first, one of the things you can do is actually just walk around your room. So, and even if you're like figuring out, well, where do I put a recording studio, or where do I kind of set up my shop? I would consider just walking around your house and figure out like what parts make sounds. Like you might have an air conditioning or maybe even a heating unit. But if you notice that at one part of the house, it's actually a lot quieter, maybe the air vents are cleaner there or something and nothing's rattling around. Oh, okay, that might be a better place. So I'm encouraging you to use your ears, right? Just be quiet, close your eyes, just really listen. Where's the quietest? And that's also a good technique to identify where is that sound coming from? What do I need to maybe throw a blanket over and cover up a sound, cover a window that has air blowing through it? These kind of things, they just seep into recordings, I think is what I'm trying to get at. And they really do ruin a recording. It'll frustrate you if you've got a great read and performance, but you're trying to edit this stuff out. And it's virtually impossible to edit out after the fact because it's embedded within your recording. Okay, I'm going to take another quick drink and then we will continue reading the questions here. All right, Mihai asks from YouTube, thanks for joining us, by the way. What about setting up a complete professional RSI home studio? And so I'm guessing RSI is remote simultaneous interpreting. That is an area, admittedly, I know very little to this on the end of more like nothing about. So I would have to, it sounds like a great topic that perhaps we can do some research on here at Voices, perhaps write an article or something along those lines. And if you have some, wanted to share more of like what some popular resources that you're looking at, feel free to drop those into the chat as well too. But that, unfortunately, I'm unfamiliar with that topic. Okay, Anne from YouTube is asking, is it better to treat a room or build a sound booth? Oh, great topic. So treating a room is really what we've been talking about, kind of like putting up blankets. Maybe you've seen these foam, almost like foam bricks that are put on the wall, or foam kind of mats that are all pinned up. So that's what we refer to as treating a room. Or building a booth is like building a room within the room. And that's what a vocal booth is. It's almost like these look like these kind of old school telephone booths sometimes, where you open the door, you close in. And what a lot of people, why would you want to build a room within the room? Because believe it or not, air is actually really good at, how to put this? I guess air is really good at preventing sound from kind of passing through. And I know it might feel a little counterintuitive, but that's why you'll see in recording studios, there's actually double pane glass. There's glass that goes from inside like the engineering booth, and then there's air, and then there's another pane of glass that goes into like the recording area. So that's why you would want to have, like, you create this, like you're almost like creating extra insulation. Air is almost like really good insulation for sound. So when we talk about building a booth, there's kind of a couple things going on there. You're creating a room within a room, which means there's air all around that. You have it in a quiet room in your house, and there's air all around it. And then you're in a booth inside there. And then you probably have these like double pane glass, if the booth does have a window, which most of them do. I'd say again, I'm gonna maybe pose more questions than answer them. If you're starting, I think just treat the room. You'll learn a lot from that. If you're considering building a booth, you can again do these relatively cost effectively. I've seen people like just basically re-renovate a closet, and it's like, I've been recording in the closet, but I think I could create a better door, not have this squeaky thing. I could set a light up there. I could have like my little a stool or a chair somewhere. I can have an outlet where I can plug in a laptop. So there's benefits to kind of building a more permanent space. You can also build almost like a booth in a box. There's some really popular, I think it's called studio bricks. Another one is, vocal booth to go. Whisper room, I think, is probably and arguably the most popular one that's on the market. They come in different size and shapes. They basically get shipped to you on a number of pallets on the back of a flatbed truck. And, you can either have somebody, you can pay for them to construct it for you, or some people do construct these on their own, because they are literally like Lego bricks and blocks that you're just putting together this booth. The benefit of that is, yes, it's very much acoustically treated for the most part. And so that would be kind of a fast way, if you have the financial resources to do so, you're looking to advance your career and your sound, to take that up a notch. And you want a permanent place to know that you can just always go there. It's going to sound great every time. You're not kind of, fighting the neighbor's sound leaking through, as we heard previously. The building a booth would certainly be my preference, and a better way to go. As I mentioned, we have a small podcasting studio here. I'm just in an office right now, so again, not a shining example given how much glass there is. But our small podcasting booth it is soundproof from that degree, where there's it is kind of a room within a room type of concept. So hopefully that was helpful there, Anne. Great question, and I appreciate you for joining us. Juanitas from Instagram, do you guys have an all-in-one guide to set up how you get voice work done, how to do the voice work reels or voiceover demos, if you will? So do we have an all-in-one guide? Of course, we've got an all-in-one guide. Voices is all about creating great resources for you, no matter your age and stage of the journey. So the best one is the beginner's guide to voice acting. We also have a professional guide to voice acting. And hopefully I'm joined by two colleagues here today, Julia and Andrew. And Andrew's our community manager, and Julia's been leading up, also managing a lot of the social channels. So hopefully they can add those links into both the professional and beginner's guide, because I think there's excellent content in each of those. If you want to go beyond that or have a very specific topic, you can go to voices.com/blog. There's a search box on the side there that you can type in something like whisper room or soundproofing, or some of the other topics that perhaps even I could get brushed up on around phone patch as well too. So if you want to go on a real specific topic, I think the blog would be a great place for you to check out. Okay, so we've got Being Alien, a user from Instagram and a member of our community there, asks, how do I reduce the amount of reverb or echo while recording in a home? Well, we covered a number of things about treating the room, about creating a quiet space, but you can do something even if you weren't to treat the room at all. And I'm going to try to simulate it here. And you'll notice that the closer I get into the microphone and I answer, it's probably going to sound a lot more intimate and a lot less echoey. And it's not because I'm reducing my voice, but the closer, and this is what's referred to as a proximity effect. The closer you are, the tighter the sound sounds, right? The tighter the voice sounds. It's almost as if like someone's leaning in and whispering in your ear. So you wonder how you hear some of these reads and these commercial reads, they're really fantastic, where it sounds like the person's just like, you're watching, Netflix with them or something. You're just hanging out and they just like have something, they just say something to you, like a passing comment. And that's almost like a style of read. We call it the authoritative, or like the approachable expert. Basically the guy or gal next door, your friend, your best friend, your neighbor that you get along with, that you can trust. And they're giving you this advice on something new. They're kind of giving you a bit of inside scoop. And that's really what the read and the style is in that commercial. And so that's one way that you can, how that sound is achieved. Of course, it's performance. Of course, it's, likely great microphone, but it's also leaning into that microphone really closely, where, if you, I was always taught kind of the ideal distance from the microphone is, one fist away from the diaphragm. If you're too far away, you end up kind of just getting this room sound, and it doesn't sound, you sound quiet. There's just not as much presence. But as you get closer and closer to the microphone and you want to have a lot of that presence, you can really lean into it. So I would encourage you to, and I've got this wind filter ahead of me that's kind of bumping and getting in the way, but I think you can try that as a way to create tighter, more intimate reads, is actually just get really, really close to that microphone and hopefully that will do it for you. It'll also answer that question from Being Alien on Instagram about reducing the amount of echo in the room. Just get nice and close to that microphone. All right, Crystal. Crystal is asking, what's the best material for soundproofing? And so I think there's a number of material, everything from actual dense foam, I would say, would be on one end, and then like these really thin, cotton sheets, if you will, on the other end. You want something that that is going to absorb sound. So one way to think about it is, sound is almost like the invisible version of like of a physical object. So if I were to drop a rock on a thin piece of sheet, it's probably going to go almost right through it. Maybe it tears a hole in it, right? Versus if I drop the rock on the foam, and the foam is just going to kind of absorb the whole rock, you probably wouldn't hear anything either. And that's probably a good indication that sound almost has many of those same properties. And so if you can see through it, the sound's going to go through it. That's kind of another idea. So I would say the denser, the better. That's why a lot of people use this dense foam. It can be anything like these, Casper mattresses, foam mattresses, or something you get from like a Home Depot or Home Hardware or Lowe's. These type of home renovation and appliance and construction type big box stores, to reuse that term. But you can get material there, or you can get, again, it's virtually the same stuff. Is the air quotes here, professional soundproofing. It's basically the same stuff. It's just shaped in diamonds or squares, and it's kind of pre-cut. It also comes with these two-sided tape. So one side of the tape sticks to the back of the foam, the other side sticks to your wall. So that's the best material. Long story short there, Crystal, is the more dense, the better. So Angela is from Instagram, and she's asking, what's the cheapest way to build a mic booth or a cabin step by step? So we actually have a do-it-yourself whisper room. And I should say whisper room is a trademark, like that's a brand and a company. So they've done such a good job on their branding. A lot of people say, oh, you need a whisper room. It's almost like synonymous with a vocal booth. But we do have a blog called Build a Budget Friendly Whisper Room, and it really is about doing it all yourself. So I'm going to refer you over to that article as well too, and it actually does walk you through step by step. If there's anything, most people I've heard is they always wish that they got the bigger version. Because you end up spending so much time in it. And so if you have an option to go, oh, do I make this a 5 foot by 3 foot, or do I just go for like the 4 foot by 3 foot? I think you'll appreciate that you went with the bigger one, whether it's just to be able to stretch out and just feel like you've got a bit more space, or even, a lot of acting is very physical, where you can wave your arms around and kind of really get into it as well too. I think you'll appreciate the more space when you go to set up that mic booth. Okay, Jimmy is asking, hey, what's a good level to achieve for an audition? Is it good to boost levels to -6 and -3 dB? So on a digital meter, what Jimmy Shaw is asking here on YouTube is basically the meter that's almost like a loudness meter, for lack of a better term. I'm just trying to make this accessible to all of us on the YouTube live here. Is that if that meter reaches all the way to kind of like peak amount, it's like the maximum capacity of like digital content that that can be processed. And if you go to 0, that's one thing. If you go over 0, that's when you get the it just starts to scratch and crunch up, and now you've got digital distortion, which nobody wants. So you've probably heard that before on some of these, maybe it's music that was encoded poorly, or, it's almost like, I think we've all heard distortion in terms of a electric guitar, but this is distortion of like the whole audio track, like including your voice. So we want to avoid that. So you don't want to be hit at 6, or sorry, you don't want to be at 0. You want to be below 0 in terms of the level or on that meter. So most people try to normalize or boost to like -3 or -6. Honestly, either is great. If you can do it at -3, again, these are just heuristics or what we call rules of thumb. The louder the better. So -3 is probably going to be the better. And this is actually on a scale where going 3 to 6 is actually a doubling of perceived loudness. So you've probably had these times where you're watching TV, a commercial comes on, it's like, wow, it feels like it just got louder. Like it's almost feels like it got twice as loud. And of course, we all run to the remote control and try to turn it down quickly. So if you've had that moment, share that in the chat. I'm sure you've experienced that yourself at some point in your life. Well, that's because they've normalized and really compressed all of that sound and pushed it all up. So it's like, it's really perceived very loud right at the top end of that, of the perceived loudness. And it's really at, kind of this recording is like, I guess delivered or broadcast at -3 dB. So if you can do that, I'll tell you one thing. When we ask clients kind of what goes into a good audition and they're listening, seasoned clients know there's a lot that goes into it. They're really listening for the read, right? Like, how are you interpreting the script and adding your own flair and flavor to it? Now, if it's a new producer who maybe doesn't hire talent all the time, ironically, they almost perceive loudness as equivalent to quality. So that's why I'm erring on the side of like, if you can produce a recording that's peaking out or kind of maxing out, I'd say at -3 dB, so that stands for decibels, then most people who are almost like aren't even in the know, they're going to perceive it as being a quote unquote higher quality because it sounds louder and sounds more present and sounds more full. So go for the loudest you can there. Babylon Center audio library from YouTube. Is regular foam the same as special acoustic foam? Admittedly, probably not. I think there's, I think you can certainly get away with it. Some foam is better than none if you're looking to treat your room. But if you are looking for special acoustic foam, there's actually even, forgive me, I forget the actual term for it, but there's even like a measurement of how dense the foam is. So you might go on again, probably like a whisper room or a vocal booth to go. They might even speak to this, or some of these acoustical treatment websites. If you're evaluating that product, they will talk about how dense the foam is, and what that'll create is like how dry your recording sounds. And the audio is kind of, what is it? Not the eye of the beholder, the ear of the beholder, maybe is a better way to phrase it. Audio is so subjective, and there's so many debates on either side of, how dense does your foam need to be? I think, I think, as I say, some is better than none. And the reason why you wouldn't want to have like, it's so dense where it's like, it almost doesn't absorb sound, because it's like basically almost becomes like plastic at a certain point. You don't want that, because that's not actually it's almost like not a natural environment, right? If it's so dry, it almost sounds a little bit lifeless. There's a recording studio. It's actually part of the audio engineering school I went to here in London, Ontario, called OIART, and that stands for the Ontario Institute of Audio Recording Technology. And they have this one recording studio, and in there, the vocal booth is actually an old meat locker from a grocery store. Now, and it has the big meat locker door. It's actually really cool. And they cut out this window so you can still see in, but it's just like two-handed locker door, and they've covered the entire thing on the inside. It's almost like being inside like a vacuum chamber. It's so distressing because the sound, and there's so much foam, the sound almost gets sucked out of that room. and you literally cannot hear anything from the outside. You have like you do like the scream test in there, and somebody's yelling as loud as they can. You cannot hear anything. That's almost on an extreme where that air, the airiness and the presence gets removed, and it sounds almost a little artificial or too digital. So I would be careful with going with like super, super dense foam that almost gives that type of feeling. Not to mention being a little claustrophobic inside a meat locker like that is also a little disconcerting, but very interesting experience. It's if you ever have these it's almost like a zero gravity type experience that you have in that recording studio. So I think you want to create a space where you're going to be recording all the time that you feel comfortable in, that you can give great reads that also sound great as well. All right, Rex from Instagram is how do I start doing some demos? How do I get started creating a demo? Well, I think maybe Julia or Andrew, we've got an awesome guide on for beginners for voice talent. There's a whole chapter on creating demos as well too, and that might even be a good topic for an upcoming session. Maybe next month's office hours might make sense for that one as well too. But in short, you probably want to have at least these two demos. I'm going to say a commercial demo, which are your radio commercials, your TV commercials, your podcast ads, your internet videos ads, like all those commercials would be on your commercial demo. And then some type of narration demo. So this might be like corporate training, maybe documentary narration. Maybe it's it's an audiobook narration. So those now. At Voices, we actually encourage you to break those up into individuals, but those are the two big themes. If there's a third one, which a lot of people are interested in getting into, but it's actually really hard to do, is all the character work. So sometimes referred to as a character demo or an animation demo. Those terms are probably used synonymously. Those are the three big ones, and then they kind of branch off into different flavors under that. So I mentioned commercial. You might even want to have a different one for radio commercials versus like internet ads, because often internet ads are like 6 seconds. So you got to be really fast and punchy. Maybe a radio commercials has more like local spots, local, mentions in it. So just think about that when you're producing your demos, but you got to start with some scripts. So we have a whole script library. Again, Julia, if you could be so helpful, grabbing a link to our script library. These are really available to you as inspiration. They're not, don't feel in any way compelled to, use it verbatim. You can edit it, you can add, you can swap out some names, you can make up some fictitious business names for the demo, because the demo, that's just short for demonstration. You're doing a demonstration of your capabilities, your ability to record, to interpret a script. That's all it is. It's actually not meant to be actual work. It's just a demonstration of what you can do. So check out those scripts. And I would rehearse them a lot until the point that you really feel like you have your own style, something unique that you're giving to that, to that particular copy, and then record some demos. And you can record them on your own. A lot of people do start there. When you're ready, you can work with a coach who can then again. You can work with a coach really at any time. We certainly encourage that. But you can work with a coach who is kind of a coach and producer. They can help you produce a great demo, because sometimes it's hard. We're either our own worst critic, or we're completely oblivious to the fact that maybe there's something in that recording that we're not quite hearing. So I would suggest at the right time, you might want to consider working with a voice coach who could produce a great demo for you. So those are some of the highlights, but I actually think that's a great idea for a topic for an upcoming office hours. If you like that idea or you have something else, just before we wrap up here, I'd encourage you to throw some ideas of what you want to hear at our next office hours, which, as I mentioned off the top, and for those who are watching, it's the last Friday of every month at 4:00 Eastern time. And I think what we're going to do is end it on that high note. I think we've answered all the questions here today. So again, I'm David Ciccarelli, the CEO and co-founder of voices.com, signing off. You guys have a great evening. Thanks so much.